But I'm thinking about 45. That's sorry, I'm so nervous. Okay. I'm so excited.
Shabbat Shalom. We're so glad that you could be with us tonight. We're so glad that we have a new level of richness and voice and song and music with our teens joining us this evening for services. Please be sure to help us and lift your voices alongside theirs as well. And if you would take just a moment and wish someone beside you or behind you or near you a Shabbat Shalom and introduce yourself. Shabbat Shalom. We have this opportunity to welcome one another, to warm up our sanctuary as we warm to Shabbat, and we light our Shabbat, we kindle our Shabbat lights as a part of that welcoming. And we invite you, please, as Roy and Susan join us on page 121. We begin our service with the kindling of Shabbat lights.
O source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us find knowledge by which to live. Lead us to take the words we shall speak into our hearts and our lives. Bless all who enter this sanctuary in need, all who bring the offerings of their hearts. May our worship lead us to acts of kindness, peace, and love. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to kindle the light of Shabbat.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Join us, please, on page 123 as we rise for Kiddush.
Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei b'richa b'afen. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, b'shabbat kodsho, b'yahava u'b'ratzon inhilanu, zikaron למעשה בראשית, כי הוא יום תחילה למקראי קודש, זכר לציון מצרים, כי בנו בחרת ויצאנו קידשת מכל העמים, בשבת קודשך באהבה וברצון התחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. לחיים.
Please be seated. Unless you are celebrating your 50th wedding anniversary, you may be seated. Rayburns, would you join us, please? It is so nice for us to be able to welcome Shabbat, to bring to a close this particular week, and to celebrate Shabbat, and to celebrate this particular moment with each of you and with both of you together on Shabbat. And so we in the community that loves you and is excited for you and shares its blessing for you, we share these words as well. Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, our God and God of our ancestors, bless this couple. Bless them on this, their 50th wedding anniversary, the anniversary of their marriage, and may you each and together reflect with deep gratitude upon the years that have passed. Undoubtedly, many and varied have been your experiences since that first moment. May you recall the joys that have sweetened your lives. May you be thankful for the strength that allowed you to weather the storms that shook you to your roots. God, you have been with this couple through all of their years together, and so may you continue to bless them with your presence in the years to come. God of all generations, we give thanks for the blessings that have graced your marriage. May this joy be with you always. Your way of life know goodness and peace, loving and good, as you help each other bear burdens and share joys. Let these next at least 50 years be filled with health and contentment, happiness, friendship, and togetherness. in the circle of your family, your loved ones, your congregation. And we all of us join together in saying, Amen. And I invite Cantor Braun to join us as we share God's blessing. May God bless you, and may God keep you. May God's face be turned to you, and may God be tender and gracious with you. May you know the fullness of God's countenance in all places, at all times, and may you be blessed with wholeness and with peace. We say, where has this week vanished? Is it lost forever? Will I ever recover anything from it? The joy of life, the unexpected victory, the realized hope, the task accomplished. Will I ever be able to banish the memory of pain, the sting of defeat, the heaviness of boredom? On this day, let me keep for a while what must drift away. On this day, let me be free of burdens that must return. On this day, Shabbat abide. Help me to withdraw for a while from the flight of time, contain the retreat of the hours and days from the grasp of frantic life. Let me learn to pause, if only for this day. Let me find peace on this day, and let me enter into a quiet world this day. On this day, Shabbat abide. We continue on page 128 with the singing of Hine Matov.
Hine matov u'manayim, sheberachim nam yachad. Hine matov u'manayim, sheberachim nam yachad. Hine matov u'manayim, sheberachim nam
Continue now on page 138 with the singing and the celebration of Shabbat as we continue to greet the Sabbath bride through the singing of Lecha Dodi, page 138.
Lecha Lecha Dodi, Likrat Likrat Kala, B'nei B'nei Shabbat Lekabala. Lecha Lecha Dodi, Likrat Likrat Kala, B'nei B'nei Shabbat Lekabala. Lecha Dodi, Likrat Likrat Kala, B'nei B'nei Shabbat Lekabala. Lecha Lecha Dodi, Likrat Likrat Kala, B'nei B'nei Shabbat Lekabala. Shamor v'zachor v'dibor echad, לקראת שבת לכו ונחה, כי מקור הברכה מראש מקרב נסוכה, שמחתם במחשבה כי לה לחדותי לקראת קלה, בני שבת תקבלה, לחדותי לקראת קלה, בני שבת תקבלה. התעוררי, התעוררי, כי בעורף קומי אורי, אורי אורי שיר דברי, כבוד אדונייך עלייך ייקח, לחדותי לקראת קלה, בני שבת תקבלה, לחדותי לקראת קלה, בני שבת תקבלה. בואי בשלום העצרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובבשורה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה, לחדותי לקראת קלה, בני שבת תקבלה, לחדותי לקראת קלה, בני שבת תקבלה, לחדותי לקראת קלה, בני שבת תקבלה, לחדותי לקראת קלה, בני שבת תקבלה.
Please be seated. Page 145 as we continue. Let's continue together. Teach me, O God, a blessing, a prayer, on the mystery of a withered leaf, on ripened fruit so fair, on the freedom to see, to sense, to breathe, to know, to hope, to despair. Teach my lips a blessing, a hymn of praise, as each morning and night you renew your days. Lest my day be today as the one before, lest routine set my ways.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבו, אמרתי ברכירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחיי כל יום אחד, וחיי כל בית ישראל.
Continue as we rise for our call to worship the Baruch Hu.
Bye.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher b'divaro ma'ariv aravim, b'chochma poteach she'arim, u'v'tfuna mishane itim, u'machalif et hazmanim, u'misader et hakochavim, b'mishmaroteim barakia kirtzono. Borei yom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or. Uma'avir yom u'mevi layla, uma'avdil ben yom u'ben layla, Adonai tsevaot shemo. El chai v'kayam tamid yimloch aleinu le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'ma'ariv aravim. Wisdom and wonder, passion and instruction, story and symbol. All these things your Torah gives to us, and the more we devote ourselves to it, the more it grows and gives. What could be a truer token of your abiding love than this holiest of your works, and the living language that gives it form? Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam.
Please be seated.
וקשרתם מאוד על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם אלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together. Ne'emar ki fada Adonai et Yaakov, uga'alo miyad chazak mimenu, Baruch ata Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah Adonai, hapores sukat shalom aleinu, ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim. Page 162, as we continue with the singing of the Shamra.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם, ברית עולם ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת שבת ויהי נפש, שבת שבת ויהי נפש. אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם.
Please rise for Tefillah on page 164.
Adonai sifata tiftachu fi yagi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, and my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imateinu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, משיב ברוח ומוריד בגשם, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיה הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בגבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה. ונאמן אתה להיום הכל, ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיה הכל.
אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהלוך סלע. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש. Please be seated as we turn to page 173 and read together at the top. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai, Kadesh HaShabbat, page 175. Ritzei Adonai Eloheinu be'amcha Yisrael, u'tefilatam ba'ahava t'kabel, u'tehi l'ratzon tamid avodat Yisrael amecha. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otacha b'vadcha b'yirah na'avod, page 177. God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth which day by day sustains us. For all these and more, we offer thanks. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulecha na'er hodot.
Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tazim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tazim Leolam. Ki ata hu melech Adon lechol hashalom. Ki ata hu melech Adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tazim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tazim Leolam. וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tazim Leolam. Tazim Leolam. Tazim Leolam.
Baruch atah Adonai, hamevorech et amo Yisrael, b'shalom. Let us take a few moments for our own personal and private prayers. Let us turn to page 371 as we pray for those who are in need of our prayers. Mishaberach Avotenu ve'imotenu, Avraham, Yitzchak ve'Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel ve'Leah, Hu yivarech et hacholim. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal those who are ill. Tonight, we think especially of James Boyle, Steve Brent, Zachary Couch, Bob DiCario, Thomas DiMatteo, Batya Leah Bat Ethel, Mark Friedman, Elizabeth Friedman, Yeshaya Edel Ben Gittel, Dennis Goldsmith, Bonnie Hughes, Bobby Johnson, Ira Coleman, Abby Cohort, George Okrent, Moshe Sa'at, Karen Jacobson, Marty Jacobson, Dorothy Jacobson, Shana Esther Bat Ruchel, Meira Ruth Bat Avraham Vasara, Beth Shackman, Moshe Ben Leah, Florence Sporn, Morty Wiener. As my gaze meets yours, please feel free to say aloud or in your hearts those you wish to join to our communal Mishaberach.
Carrie Hare,
Larry Babin.
Madge Merlin.
May the Blessed Holy One be filled with compassion for their health to be restored, their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and spirit. And let us all say together, Amen. Shabbat Shalom. The Dvar Torah tonight was inspired and dedicated to those who will enlighten us and who will educate us during February Inclusion Month. In this week's Parsha, Jethro, we are all standing again at Sinai. All of the Erev Rav, the mixed multitude of 600,000 who fled from Egypt, were called for by God and gathered at the foot of Mount Sinai, and all of them hear the word of God. The Midrash says that during the first revelation 3 millennia ago, each person heard it according to his or her own abilities to understand, so that no two people heard exactly the same thing. On a global scale, an early commentator, Rabbi Yochanan, wrote that the voice of God went forth and split into 70 voices, 70 languages, so that all nations would hear, and each nation would hear the voice in its own tongue. They were all there, and they could all say that they were involved in the most overwhelming event of all time. And we can add one more thing. They were all in agreement. Even in their fear of the unknown's future, this is what they wanted. This is what they yearned for. This was perhaps the first and the last time that the Israelites, in all its incarnations over the millennia, were in total agreement about anything. Let us consider this utopian image. Yes, God was and is inclusive, but were and are we? In chapter 19 alone, it is Ha'am, the people, who are mentioned 15 times as a recipient of God's call to the mount. Is the recipient of God's call to the mountain revelation, and the subsequent recitation of the Ten Commandments in chapter 20 of this week's parsha. The people, all the people, is a fundamental principle. Revelation comes to all the people as a whole for the first time after many individual revelations. All the people become a unit, all placed in a unified existence of responsibility to one another. Was anyone excluded? The text itself points to a blatant exclusion from this momentous experience. When God tells Moses to command the people to sanctify themselves for 3 days to be ready for the divine revelation, God emphasizes that the people should be instructed not to touch or even approach the mountain. Moses begins to repeat God's commands to the people, yet he concludes not by reiterating God's command not to touch the mountain, but instead by instructing the Israelites not to go near a woman. Why does Moses transform God's words? Our commentators speculate that Moses, the lawgiver apprentice, was dumbing down God's grandiose prohibition against touching the mountain as a step towards purifying themselves for this great event, with the known social practice of not touching a woman during menses for fear of ritual contamination from the blood. Purification in Jewish culture and law, we understand, is the act of making oneself holy, kadosh, separate from that which is profane or impure. At certain times, sexual relations render one impure according to Jewish law. That's for another discussion. It is notable that other commentators attempt to reverse the impact of Moses' verbal blunder. They say that after the 3 days of prep, women are no longer impure and can thus fully participate in the activities at the mountain. Moses proscribes women. God does not. If the cloud-covered mountain is the holy dwelling place of God in this narrative and beyond human perception and discernment, we can reason why God commands the people not to touch the mountain. As a result, all the people stand as one in fear around its perimeter, blinded by a thick cloud, with Moses, their leader, out of sight and engaging with God up on the mountain. They experience the revelation only through their sense of hearing, the claps of thunder, the crackles of lightning. Perhaps this is why we translate the people's affirmation at Sinai, Na'aseh v'nishma, as we will do and we will understand, while nishma really literally means we will hear. All this is to say that God intended that the people, now physically free from slavery, be as one, terrified, awed, vulnerable, interdependent, excited, expectant, yet ready to take the leap of faith, to receive a new covenant for living in community and society. It seems to me that to receive this new covenant of law and successfully internalize it is moral imperative. The audience at any Sinai has to be vulnerable. This vulnerability does not mean being open to criticism or assault. This vulnerability is having an opening in body, mind, heart, wholly open for that which we do not possess natural defenses. It's the opposite of weariness and self-protection. Dr. Brene Brown, a research professor at the University of Houston Graduate School of Social Work, as well as the author of the #1 New York Times bestselling book, Daring Greatly: How the Courage to be Vulnerable Transforms the Way We Live, Love, Parent, and Lead, defines this vulnerability. It is basically uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. She confesses, I spent a lot of years trying to outrun or outsmart vulnerability by making things certain and definite, black and white, good and bad. My inability to lean into the discomfort of vulnerability limited the fullness of those important experiences that are wrought with uncertainty. Love, belonging, trust, joy, and creativity, to name a few. Learning how to be vulnerable has been a street fight for me, she says, but it's been worth it. When you shut down vulnerability, you shut down opportunity. The people of the biblical narrative stood in the desert at the mountain and had no defenses against either. The desert because it was an alien and unfriendly environment, and the mountain because there God was supreme. Still, the people stood at a distance, and through the fire and smoke and thunder and fear and discomfort, they discerned and digested what God demands of us, to be humble and to walk in the ways of God. What we know, even by other names and forms, is the spiritual guide of all peoples. Can vulnerability, especially when it causes raw physical and emotional wounds, allow us to experience the revelation at Sinai? To what end? For the mixed multitude in the biblical narrative, revelation was meant to be the beginning of freedom for all. Perhaps we need to recapture this experience in the deepest sense. Coincidentally, we read in Isaiah in this week's Haftarah that a seraph, an angel of God, placed a hot coal on the prophet's lips to purify his words of prophecy. Yuck. The Midrash tells us that Moses, while sitting on Pharaoh's lap as a young child, put a hot coal to his lips instead of jewels in order to assure his Egyptian father that he did not aspire to the crown, and he thus saved his own neck, his own life. Uri Tzvi Greenberg, the late eminent Israeli Holocaust poet, draws on this trope of biblical prophecy in his poem, With My God the Blacksmith, where he writes, Pi petza patuach, ve'eram adaber im Eli. My mouth is a gaping wound, and naked I speak to my God. This wound that our prophets experienced and that aligned them more closely to God's intentions for humanity may be just a clue to interpret and internalize for us. As some of you may know, over winter break, Alan, Rabbi Katz said it, the other Rabbi Katz, and I took a 3,000-mile car trip over 9 days to several civil rights museums and memorials in Georgia, Alabama, and Tennessee. We began our pilgrimage at the Civil and Human Rights Museum in Atlanta. In the second room of this very comprehensive, interactive, high-tech, chronological journey from the 16th to the 21st centuries of slavery and enslavement in America, we encountered the most powerful exhibit of the entire trip. I sat at a reconstructed Greensboro, North Carolina lunch counter, staffed by a smiling, young African American. She told me to place my palms on top of the outline handprints on the counter, along with 2 other visitors, don large headphones, which turned out to be those virtual experience headphones, and to close my eyes. For the next minute and a half, I was pummeled with anti-racist barbs of filth and debasement, along with the pounding of sticks on my head, face, and neck. Within 5 seconds of this virtual beating, I began to sob uncontrollably. Even after removing my headphones, I was still crying. The young staff person shoved a box of tissues in front of me. This museum had boxes of tissues in every single room. When I slipped off the lunch counter stool, she grabbed me in a long and tight hug. I could only respond to her over and over, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I was so wounded and vulnerable at that moment, and strangely glad of it. Perhaps this is what the great medieval sage Maimonides meant as the first stage of teshuvah, of atonement, when one fesses up to the cruelty of a transgression. And make no mistake, I was the sinner by virtue of my color. I think my spirit remained vulnerable at every site we visited. Today, I continue to wonder what exactly will be the after effects. Can I truly transform my real, if not outwardly expressed, fears of difference deep inside of me to uninhibited love and loving behaviors? Exposure and vulnerability played out again in the New Legacy Museum in Montgomery, Alabama. The museum and outside memorial are dedicated to remembering the more than 4,000 African Americans who were lynched between 1870 and 1950 in the Deep South, mostly for such reasons as standing around in a white neighborhood, performing the wedding of a black man and a white woman, reporting a white man for whipping his neighbors, for organizing black voters, and for striking to protest low wages. The inspiration behind this museum is Bryan Stevenson, lawyer and writer, who is the founder of the Equal Justice Initiative. He is dedicated to defending people of color who are unjustly incarcerated and to working towards race-based reform in the criminal justice system. Stevenson notes that even after 150 years since the abolition of slavery, and all of our efforts to reverse the negative consequences of involuntary servitude, racial discrimination, and oppression, we have still not purified our mind and heart of the ideology of white supremacy, in which people persuaded themselves that black people aren't fully human. To Stevenson, this ideology has evolved into also demonizing Mexicans and Muslims. Rabbi Isaiah Rothstein, a Jew of color and founder of the Union Street Sanctuary, a Jewish social organization in Brooklyn, offers an optimistic response to Bryan Stevenson. He said this past week, "American roots for all of us are complex collisions of multiple worlds and perspectives. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it does bend towards justice. I am holding an awareness that so many different Jewish communities are looking to uplift marginalized groups, uplift the downtrodden, and promote acts of kindness and charity. I also know that living the change that Martin Luther King Jr. was so boldly, people got stuck here. I apologize. Oh, here we go. So he was so boldly pursuing takes partnerships that aren't solely dependent on one day a year. The exclusion of color was non-existent at Sinai. We know that all the spectators were blind to the revelation. We know that all those present were vulnerable to the smoke and thunderous noise, holding on to each other for comfort, security, and towards communal responsibility. We know that the experience was the focus and not the individuals who comprised the the people. We know that for the revelation to have happened, the people were forced into a vulnerable state of mind and heart. This temporary vulnerability was meant to jumpstart humanity towards a world infused with freedom, kindness, justice, and compassion. Let us be hopeful that we can recapture the purity of their experience together by continuing to submit ourselves to direct discomfort for the sake of recreating a natural inclusion of the all the people, by confronting the horrific and unconscionable history of racial cruelty and oppression in our country, by engaging directly and often with those differently abled, those who present with heteronormative genders, those who live in jails, on the streets, in the shelters, and yes, those from whom we might alienate ourselves because of philosophic, political, social, and cultural differences. For Sinai then and now, differences are exclusionary. No one was excluded then. God included all. A beautiful midrash asks, why was the Torah not given in the land of Israel? If so, one might say, in my territory the Torah was given. And another might say, no, in my territory the Torah was given. Therefore, the Torah was given in the desert, publicly and openly, in a place belonging to no one, and thus belonging to everyone. What a compelling reminder that we all deserve to be included, no matter our age, sex, race, and ability. This is the legacy of God's revelation. Shabbat Shalom. We now conclude our service by, please rise as we move to page 586 for Elena. In the words of Margie Pearson, holy is the hand that works for peace and for justice. Holy is the mouth that speaks for goodness. Holy is the foot that walks towards mercy. Let us lift each other up on our shoulders and carry each other along. Let holiness move in us. Let us pay attention to its small voice. Let us see the light in others and honor that light. Remember the dead who paid our way here dearly, and remember the unborn for whom we build our houses. Praise the light that shines before us, through us, after us. We take this moment to remember those whose shoulders carried us and whose memory we hold dear. Tonight, we mourn the recent passing of those, and for those who are a period of Shloshim, the first 30 days of Jeanette Schneider, and Colleen Brickley. We also acknowledge the Yortzites, the anniversaries of the passing of the following people: Fanny Baker, Rose Burns, Mordechai Brill, Paul Baran, Goldie Chavinson, Hannah S. Cohen, Maurice Cornell, Anna Doran, Reuben Friedland, Kay Gibbons, Melvin Goldberg, Harold Green, Jason Herrick, Esther Hutkoff, Dorothy Katzel, Gertrude Kessler, Sari Lieberman, Alfred Marcus, Esther Nemitz, Ann Norrie, Ann Nussbaum, Margaret Olson, Sheldon Rudman, Robert Rosen, Leon Rosenfeld, Ann Ryback, Bernard Schwartz, Harry Sigalo, Sophia Rolich-Steckloff, Donald Stearns, Alfred Stiller, Jack Tansman, Pauline Tansman, Gerald Ustain, Ruth Weiss. If you would like to add your other names to our communal memory, please do so as I gaze around the room. Zichronam Livracha, may their memories always be for a blessing. Please turn to page 598 for Kaddish. And together we pray. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, v'yamad yivrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon, v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'zman kariv v'yimru amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah barach leolam olmei olmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar, imam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal, shmei t'kudesha b'richu, le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran b'yalma v'yimru amen. Yehi shlama Rabbah min shemaya, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום, עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ויאמרו אמן. Please be seated. Shabbat Shalom again. We have, let's do the announcements. Let's just look at that first. Good. All right. Shabbat Shalom again, everyone. And we have several announcements, and I tried to whittle them down, but they're all very important. So take a breath. First of all, I want to say what joy, what beauty it was to hear all of you tonight participate. You certainly are the next generation, and we will carry you on our shoulders. And thank you, Canterbury, for bringing their talent and their enthusiasm together and leading them tonight. It was truly a joy. I hope you'll continue to do it, too. Thank you. I also want to take the opportunity to introduce Marilyn Rosen, our greeter this evening. Marilyn, a wave in the back. If you have any questions or suggestions or even kind words, please approach Marilyn. I'm sure she'd love to hear them. A mazel tov to Al and Lenny Rainburn on the occasion of their 50th wedding anniversary. They are sponsoring the Oneg tonight, so thank them for that too, and we wish them a hearty mazel tov. May you only go from strength to strength. We also wish a mazel tov to Sue and Peter Bondi on the birth of their granddaughter, Hadley Maya, the daughter of Dan and Leah Bondi. Just a quick rundown. Tomorrow morning, there is Torah study at 9:15 a.m., Shabbat morning service at 10:30 a.m. On Sunday, adult ed at 9:30. 10:30 is adult Hebrew class, and there is a new member brunch at 12 that day as well. So Purim choir for Purim Fever Disco Megillah. The practices are January 27th on Sundays from 10 to 11. Please speak to Canterbury if you would like to participate or get updated on that. As I mentioned, February is Jewish Disability and Inclusion Month, and I certainly hope that all of us will come out to support all the speakers who will be here every Friday night during that time. On February 1st, there's an Erev Shabbat family service with Sasson participating, and a focus on visual impairments, followed by Shabbat with friends. And this is the exciting part. Paralympians with visual impairments, skier Lindsay Ball and swimmer Martha Ruther, and forgive me if I've mispronounced their names, will be the speakers. And during Shabbat dinner with friends, there'll be simulations of visual impairments, demonstrations of Braille, and sighted guidance of people who are blind. So it's not to be missed, it seems to me. Winterfest, February 2nd, February 3rd, Men's Club, everybody's club, Super Bowl party here at 4 p.m. in the Youth Lounge of Temple Sinai.
5:30.
Excuse me.
They said 5:30.
Thank you. Thank you.
The doors will be locked.
Good call. Thank you for spotting me on that. Rain volunteer training, Tuesday, February 5th at 6:30 p.m. at New Hope Free Methodist Church. Also, don't forget, if you are in the decades of the 40s or the 50s, come to Jewish Pickling 101 with the owners of the Gefilteria on February 9th at 6 p.m. here at Temple Sinai. And also, please consider joining the Temple Sinai delegation to the consultation on conscience, sponsored by the Religious Action Center. And you can contact Liz Ornstein if you need some more information about that. And I think next is our closing song, which is tonight. Tonight it is
Od Yavo Shalom
Od Yavo
Aleinu,
Shalom, and that is on page
656.
656 or 657? 657.
57. Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Me'al Kulam. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Me'al Kulam.
lead your wonderful instrumentalists and vocalists in
So the band, can we come on?
Come on up. It's a small purr. Very small purr. Spread my finger. Good.
So cool.
We won them. Takes so little to please, right? But I invite you to rise for the closing benediction. Oh God, may we draw strength from you to not withdraw from our fragmented world, but rather to radiate a positive influence on it through every aspect of living, and especially through our willingness to confront that which is wounding to our sense of equity and justice, so that we will more deeply feel the wounds of others as a way of seeking the holiness in all peoples and fulfill this week's prophecy from God, namely that the people of Israel become a mamlechet kohanim v'goy kadosh, a sovereignty of priests and a holy nation. Shabbat shalom.
Congratulations.
Well, when I'm printing my photo off, this is what I said about you.
The other half.
You know what?
I'm David.
You don't have to. No, we haven't Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
go.
He wants to go.
Felt this, heard it also. See if other people had the same thought. Because they, like, I'm sure, like, it's like you guys have here, they face instructors, so going around the center. Yes.
He plays so long. So I don't know if it's special for them. So I was thinking that's the reason I was using that one, because I thought we didn't I was turning around.
Okay. I'm gonna go find her.
That's where I was assuming.